Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friend Diagram. This is the podcast where two friends catch up and find common ground between their favorite media. I'm Remy.
I'm Kat, and today we will be discussing It's Such a Beautiful Day and Speaker for the Dead. Warning, spoilers ahead.
Hi, Kat.
Hi, Remy. What's up?
Not too much, just trying to get through the week. It's a beautiful week here in New York City. I know it's beautiful there where you are as well.
It is.
And all I want to do is just be outside all the time. Just like gaze out my window as I'm working, thinking about how much I'd much rather be outside.
I'd hang out rock.
I'd hang out rock anywhere, just anywhere out there.
Yeah. You have fun weekend plans, right?
I do.
Ooh.
It is Bleak Week here in New York City, which means that the Paris Theater has a special programming going on this week that they're just offering a range of extremely bleak films and a bunch of really good rep screenings and a bunch of really cool Q&As and or introductions to all of these rep screenings. And I somehow spontaneously had the best timing because I was just perusing the Paris Theater website the exact instant they announced their final addition to the Bleak Week film schedule, and it was none other than my favorite film of all time, There Will Be Blood, with a Q&A with Paul Dano. And so obviously immediately I got a ticket, and I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. It'll be on 35mm, they say.
Ooh.
And hopefully no fistfights happen at this one. There was a fistfight at Come and See, introduced by Ari Aster earlier this week. I read an entire breakdown of the evening's events on Reddit, described by people in the audience,
unhinged.
and it sounded like there's a bunch of bizarre things that happened, but they were all stemming from one person that had really bizarre behavior, and he's the one that instigated the fist fight at Come and See. And so hopefully it's just a bunch of cool people at There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, bring your brass knuckles, I guess.
I guess. Who knows, man? I'll be ready for anything.
What else is on the Bleak Week lineup?
Oh, there's a bunch of stuff. I was disappointed that I didn't plan to go to Margaret, the Kenneth Lonergan film, on Monday, because that would have been really cool. But it's really hard for me to judge if I'll be available to go to weekday stuff.
Yeah.
So that was touch and go. And then I just realized it too late. Other stuff that's happening. I said Come and See. There's going to be Full Metal Jacket, The River, Salo, A Panic in Needle Park, Cries and Whispers. There's a lot of them. It's a lot
They do sound quite bleak.
You know what's happening? You know what's showing right after There Will Be Blood?
What?
Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Oh, wow.
Maybe centipedes will rain from the ceiling during that screening.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Take Will to that one.
Yeah. But yeah, that's something that happens. It started, I think, in LA, and this is the first week they're doing it. The first year they're doing Bleak Week in New York, I believe.
That's so fun. I love good theater programming like that. I wish we had more of that in Jersey.
Yeah.
But that's why New York's so cool.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know how the interview with Paul Dano is.
Yeah, that too.
That sounds so cool.
I'm excited.
He seems like really down to earth, and I'm just always so impressed by his performances. And I mean, There Will Be Blood is one of my favorite Paul Dano performances. I think like his speech at the pulpit is like so iconic, and I could watch that on a loop. I think it's so good. Yeah,
I know. He's always great. And this is definitely, I think, one of his better known roles for sure.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that experience must have been like going toe to toe with DDL.
I know.
I can't imagine it. being told he's going to bury you under the ground.
Mhm.
Incredible.
Intimidating, certainly.
Yeah, hopefully the moderator will do a good job with the Q&A.
Do you know who's doing the moderation?
I don't think I know. It didn't say on the website, but they are some of the like New York City film critics that I follow have been involved in the Q&As earlier in the week, like the one with Kenneth Lonergan, and so I'm hoping that they'll get someone similarly qualified for the Paul Dano one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Do you have anything exciting coming up this weekend?
Not this weekend. I am going up to Maine, not this weekend, but next weekend. And we've decided to take a long weekend up in Maine, which will be really nice. It was kind of decided today, so I'm glad that we get to do that. And I think my mother-in-law has like a injury right now, so I think that'll make her happy and give her some company, because I think she's getting a little bored. But yeah, it'll be really nice. And yeah, I don't know. Looking forward to some time on the lake.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be so nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a nice change of pace as well.
I was like, I gotta be by some water for a while. And I like that long drive too. I think we're gonna end up leaving like late on Thursday and getting there around midnight. So that'll be kind of nice.
Yeah, that'll be nice to do a long weekend.
But yeah, that's it. I don't know. I'm in thesis hell, so
yeah,
we're just taking every day as it comes.
I'm trying to remember something from this past weekend, and I'm totally blanking. 1 second.
I went and saw The Watchers.
Okay. I was like, I know I had something to talk to you about that I saw on Saturday, and I was like, I cannot think of it.
Yeah,
I cannot
what did you think?
it.
Did you like The Watchers?
I thought it was interesting. Yeah. It didn't really hit for me, but I know you're usually much more of a Shyamalan person, and definitely. I just kind of assumed this would fall somewhere in the Shyamalan lineage, because it's obviously not directed by M. Night himself, but by his daughter. And so I was like, it's probably going to be somewhere in the same vicinity. And I definitely had no idea, like no preconceived notions about where things were going subject-wise going in, which was good. But I just don't know if it like came together for me. But I was wondering how you felt about it.
I thought it was a fun time. Obviously, I kind of go into any kind of Shyamalan movie with a very open mind and just kind of know that not everyone's going to like it, but I probably will. And I enjoyed it a lot, actually. And I was really upset because I was on Rotten Tomatoes trying to get a feel for like what critics were thinking of it. And their whole review was just spoiler alert, colon. And then they said what the whole thing was. And I was like, are you fucking with me right now? Yeah. That's your whole review, you asshole. So I was a little upset that I like kind of knew what was going on beforehand, but I thought it was fun. I thought it was a cool concept. I love folk horror, so I was just there for the vibe. I thought it had some really good spooks. Like when she goes down in that hole, I was like, oh, I'm so scared right now. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth the watch. And for a directorial debut, I mean, I thought it was decent. So I would go check it out. I'm excited to see what she does next. And it was a fun time.
I really like the golden conure, the bird that was in it. That was my favorite part. Great bird acting. Excellent bird acting. Yeah.
And I liked where that went. I did think they were going to eat the bird.
I was worried for that bird many times. And also, sometimes I was like, just leave that bird behind. Like, what are you doing?
Like, what are we doing here?
Why are you carrying this huge cage around?
Yeah.
Just let that bird free.
Yeah. I think it had some really good imagery in it that was like pretty spooky. Yeah. I don't want to give more away. I think people should go see it.
Definitely go in fresh if you can.
Yeah.
Like, go in with no preconceived notions if possible.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely wasn't like too scary.
No.
It had its good spooks, but I was there for the story and I thought it was really fun. And I love Dakota Fanning, and I really like Georgina Campbell in that
She's
too.
always good.
She was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you did a double feature, didn't you, on Saturday? You saw In a Violent Nature as well?
I did see In a Violent Nature, and I enjoyed that as well. It was very different. It was very gory, so if you don't like that, I definitely wouldn't recommend it. It was verging on too gory for me, and I don't really like gore, but because of the way that it was done, and it wasn't done in like a scary way, it didn't bother me so much. It kind of felt like a very cinematic video game to me, like kind of tromping through the forest. And then I love, I don't want to like, I don't think that there's much to spoil, but there's kind of a point of view shift at the very end. And because you've kind of gotten so used to seeing everything from the perspective of the serial killer, you forget that you're in a horror movie until that point of view shift happens, and it gets so tense and so scary all of a sudden. And I thought it was very artfully done. It was really surprising to me and left me feeling like, I'm really glad they like left it on that note. And I was very pleased with it.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still hoping to get out to see that.
Yeah.
Potentially this week. It wasn't showing at my normal place, so
yeah,
that's why I went to Watchers instead. And then I prioritized a different screening on Sunday instead because there was something more limited that I was like, ooh, I gotta get out and see that.
Gotcha.
While I can.
Yeah.
And that's actually my topic for this week.
Ooh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, I would recommend it. I think you would enjoy it in particular. It was very like procedural and interesting in that way. I mean, I think some of the dialogue left a bit to be desired, like where there was dialogue, but I think if you can like get past that, it's really, really fantastic. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Definitely, I think worth it to see how the conceit plays out.
Yeah, and I saw that it was a Shudder original, so I think it should be streaming on Shudder at some point, so keep an eye out for that if you can't see it in the theater. But I noticed that when I was going into that as well.
Cool.
Oh, sorry, can I interrupt you? One thing I loved about The Watchers, which is absolutely in my wheelhouse, is that there is like a series of found footage videos that occur in the middle, and I was like, this is fantastic. This is love found my footage. Shit. I was like, this is exactly what I've been craving. So if you like any kind of found footage, there's a little tidbit in there that I found very enjoyable. So
you're so funny.
But yes, please tell me about your pick for the day.
Yeah, so my favorite thing that I saw this week was a special limited release of the 2012 film It's Such a Beautiful Day, which is written, directed, starring, and drawn by Don Hertzfeldt. And this is his film from 2012, like I said, but it's playing in select theaters now, packaged together with another one of his short films, which is brand new, and it's called Me. And because Me is about like 20 minutes long, and It's Such a Beautiful Day is a little bit over an hour, they're offering like seeing them back to back in the theater in this larger conceptual experience with some interstitial media in between the two films. So they're specifically packaged to be viewed in the theater with all of this extra content as well. And I have never seen It's Such a Beautiful Day because I believe it's really hard to get a hold of. And I think right now it might only exist on Blu-ray. But I've heard really great things about it. I've been aware of Don Hertzfeldt for a long time. I think anyone that is my age at least knows about him tangentially because of his short film Rejected that was very popular in the early days of YouTube. It's the My Spoon's Too Big. Okay, if you don't know that, then
I'm too young.
You're too young.
I'm a little baby.
Okay, then this is going to be tougher to explain than I thought.
Sorry.
It's okay. I should have sent you that. That's still available on YouTube. But
maybe if I Google it, I'll recognize like a still from it.
Potentially.
What was it called? Rejected?
Rejected.
Don something?
Hertzfeldt. Hertz.
I recognize that banana.
Okay, yes, the banana is in it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it, but maybe I've seen like memes made with the banana or
Potentially. It was, that was huge when I was in high school, and that was my introduction to Don Hertzfeldt. And to be fair, that is, I think, represents his earlier work. That was like his first foray into like mainstream success, if that is something you can say about an animated short film. And he has done subsequent short films since then that are available on YouTube as well. Like World of Tomorrow is definitely worth checking out as well. But I had never had a chance to see It's Such a Beautiful Day because I don't have a Blu-ray player and I don't have Blu-rays. I'm not a millionaire. And
if you were going to say, I'm not a million years old.
No, I was going to say, I don't have Blu-ray money.
Oh, no.
But maybe one day. So when I found out this was available this past weekend, I was like, okay, I got to get out and see that. Because I want to see the new short film, Me. And I also want to see It's Such a Beautiful Day, because I've heard so many rave things about It's Such a Beautiful Day. And so I went to the Alamo Draft House in Lower Manhattan because they were the only ones carrying it in my vicinity. And it was my first time at that theater, and it was really nice, very nice facility, really nice sound, really nice screen. It was approximately 4 stories underground, so it kind of felt like going to the movies in a bomb shelter.
So weird.
But it was pretty cool. I would definitely go back there again. I know they're going to have Kinds of Kindness there, so if no one closer has it, that's probably where I'll definitely go see Kinds of Kindness.
Oh. I would think that Kinds of Kindness will be at the AMC.
I thought so too, but it doesn't show up in their coming soon category. I was like, what are you guys doing? You're asleep at the wheel. Get Kinds of Kindness.
That's shocking to me.
I know.
They've been
it's
showing
really
the
weird
trailer.
Yeah. What the hell is going on? Maybe they just
haven't made the post for it yet.
Maybe. We'll see.
I wonder if I don't know. I can't speculate. I don't know anything about how movies work. So, yeah, that would be really weird if they didn't have it, though.
Who knows?
Cool. Heard good things about Alamo Draft House.
Yeah, it was really cool. And it was definitely 1000% worth going to see this on the big screen.
Oh, cool.
I really enjoyed the experience of seeing this in the theater. And just comparing with what I saw in the theater with the segment that is available on YouTube, it looks like they put a huge amount of work into the restoration for this as well, since the 2012 version. And that was excellent work too. And I was talking to you before the show, before recording, about how difficult I felt like it was going to be to describe It's Such a Beautiful Day, because it's a really unique piece of work. It's the first time I'm covering an animated film on the podcast, actually, because I don't normally consume a ton of animation. That's not my normal wheelhouse. But I've always been drawn to Don Hertzfeldt's work. I think, because it's a little bit more unconventional compared to a lot of animated stuff, but also because I really like the quality of his work in that you're never, how do I put it? I really like the quality of his work in that you are always aware that you're watching something animated. There's always, I think, this like intentional jitter, like frame to frame. And a lot of times he incorporates the actual physical media itself, like the paper, like showing wrinkles in the paper as a part of an expression of what's happening in the film, or just having a really like rough drawn image as a part of what's happening in the film. And in that way, it's always acknowledging that you're looking at an animated piece of art and an animated drawing, and using every preconceived notion that you have about the physical act of drawing to emphasize your interpretation of what you're seeing in the film. So whether that's sort of breaking the fourth wall and drawing attention to the fact that you're looking at a drawing, or using mixed media to expand on the mental state of the characters that you're watching. I just think Don Hertzfeldt's approach to using animation to express his ideas is extremely unique, and I really love his approach in particular, because it can be very sparse at times, but every single thing seems extremely well thought out, and it's always thematically coherent with the idea that he's trying to get across, or the emotion that he's trying to convey through all of those choices that he's putting on the palette for you. And I actually really liked, there was a little interstitial introduction to It's Such a Beautiful Day in the theater experience where Don Hertzfeldt introduced it via video. Because you saw me first, and then there was like a musical interlude, and then there was a video from Don Hertzfeldt introducing It's Such a Beautiful Day, and he did a little bit of a reflection on some of the reactions he's gotten to It's Such a Beautiful Day over the past decade, and a reflection of how, his attitude to the work has evolved over the past decade, and also some really fascinating insights into how he made the film to begin with, using like an old 35mm animation camera.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of experimental techniques in order to like splice together different segments of the page that he animated completely separately, but only like covered up the camera to let like only one hole of animation show through at a time, and then somehow sync it up manually with timestamps as he was using this camera to record and animate at the same time. It was insane. Like, I can't imagine how technically challenging this project was, and I mean, for that alone, it's an insane achievement that he was able to accomplish all of those experimental techniques successfully, but also to use them to convey so many interesting ideas. I think I'm really glad that I was able to experience this film finally. And I guess I should say, I mean, the film itself is approximately an hour long, like I said, and it's composed of a trilogy of short films that he released independently, but they actually do form like an actual arc following a main character named Bill, who is struggling with problems with illness and memory and questions about his life and his loved ones as he works through those issues that come up as a part of his illness and treatment. And the scope of the film is so broad. It is so hard to describe because it deals with something as specific as Bill's thought process when he is selecting produce in the supermarket to questions about the nature of memory and what it's like to understand your loved ones and how they see you as their family member and what love is, and a lot of it centers on the process of dying and the concept of dying and the concept of loving other people. And it is so many different things all at once. But my collective emotion that I felt very distinctly when I was watching it in the theater was that I feel very strongly that perhaps Don Hertzfeldt is the only person on Earth that knows anything about being alive and dying. I don't think anyone comes close to understanding what this guy knows about these subjects. And so it's extremely difficult to describe because it's so unique.
In his introduction, did he talk about like what inspired him to make the film? Or do you know in other interviews, has he talked about that?
I don't remember if he brought that up specifically in the introduction, but he did say he's received so many letters from people over the years in reaction to the film and about how much better it's made them feel about these types of topics. And so it definitely produces a profound experience for a lot of people viewing it. I don't remember him touching on his motivations for making it, though.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons it's really difficult to describe the project as a whole is because it touches on so many huge abstract ideas, but in the moment, you are so seamlessly following a version of Bill's stream of consciousness that is voiced by Don Hertzfeldt in a way that it all makes sense in the moment. Even though there isn't a very strong narrative plot that you're following, things kind of jump around because a lot of Bill's mental state is fractured. And so the narrative is certainly very fractured. And while that could be sound like a little jarring on the page, in the moment, it just flows kind of like poetry in that the emotions of what you're experiencing based on what you're seeing makes sense, even if on paper it doesn't exactly make sense that you're jumping between all of these big ideas. In a poetic way, everything makes absolute sense to me, at least as a viewer. And I think that's where the power of It's Such a Beautiful Day comes from, because even though you're looking at really raw animation at times and things can become abstract or absurd or often like very humorous, the genuine emotion that it evokes is profound. And the experience of watching everything that Bill goes through and learning more about his family and his loved ones, it just generally fostered a feeling of A, appreciating life more, and B, just feeling more okay about death. And I think that is exceptionally difficult to achieve and an extremely valuable outcome from a piece of art like this. And after I watched it, I 100% could see why people write to Don Hertzfeldt all the time about how this film made them feel better about various aspects of their lives. That I can certainly see why people would feel compelled to do that. And I think especially the experience of seeing it in the theater, where it is so overwhelming and encompassing and there's no distractions around you, I thought that absolutely enhanced the experience. Yeah. And I would definitely recommend it if anyone still has the opportunity to do this. I think I saw announcements that this was expanding into theaters in the UK very soon,
wow.
which is great. And so
I also feel like there's something special about seeing it in a theater with a crowd. Like, not this film in particular, but I think that there's something that I really enjoy about, like, the community experience of the theater. It, like, feels, I don't know, nice to be reacting to the same content with a group of people. And I feel like this could be really powerful to watch with, like, multiple people in the theater, you know?
Yeah. And it's also, I should also make it very clear that while the themes and the subject matter is very powerful, it is 100% in the Don Hertzfeldt realm of absurdist dark comedy as well. Like, this isn't like a super serious thing. It's his typical approach of using absurdism to point out strange aspects of society and social norms and just human foibles. And I think that obviously keeps it so that the subject matter isn't overwhelming and you can focus on Bill as a character and his relatable flaws or just relatable experiences, not flaws per se. And his approach of being both absurd and humorous, but also deeply profound, is a really interesting mix that I also think is a very difficult balance to achieve. But when done right, somehow just makes the impact even stronger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's all I would really want to say. It's probably even saying too much already. Like, that's definitely more than I knew going into it, but I would encourage anyone to see it, especially if you have ever seen any of Don Hertzfeldt's past short films. You definitely have an idea of a feel for his work if you've seen Rejected or World of Tomorrow. Check those out, and it definitely, if you get a chance to see this or a chance to acquire it sometime later on, hopefully it becomes easier to acquire and see now that they're doing this remaster and this packaging with me. I would love it if they made this more accessible, because I think a lot of people would really connect with it. And if you get the chance, I would highly recommend seeing it.
Yeah. We'll link the 2 Don Hertzfeldt videos that you mentioned down in the show notes. So go check out that. I definitely will be, because it sounds great. And I'm very curious about this banana. So I gotta figure out what's going on.
Yeah. I think you'll really like it. You and I were just talking about endorphin port before we began, because once you see endorphin port, you never really stop thinking about it. And I think if you like endorphin port, you would definitely vibe with Don Hertzfeldt's work as well, because it's a mix of absurdist humor and deeply important ideas.
I saw someone today who looked a lot like Tim Robinson.
No way. Where?
It wasn't him in the park. But I was like, why does that guy look so familiar? And then I was like, well, looks just like Tim Robinson.
What would you have done if it was him?
Asked him if the buns are their money.
I bet he has so many strange interactions in real life.
Oh, of course. Yeah, he's gotta.
Yeah, that poor guy. I think he might be shy in real life. Yeah.
So
I don't
am I.
know, though. Yeah, me too. We all are, Tim. Don't worry.
Sweet. Yeah, that sounds really cool. I watched the trailer for it, and it looks extremely unique. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out and seeing if it comes anywhere near me, or I'll probably, I don't know, I can watch a Blu-ray. I have a PS4. I think PS4
do they play those?
I think so.
Cool.
I'm going to stick a Blu-ray disc in there and find out. Could I Google the question?
I know there's different formats of Blu-ray discs and different players, and it varies by country. But
Fuck around and find out.
That's all I know.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, so my pick for the week, it's kind of a twofold pick.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to talk about the first novel in the series just very briefly, but my main topic for the day is going to be Speaker for the Dead, which is a novel by Orson Scott Card that is one of my favorite books ever. I read it at the start of grad school, and it really had a profound impact on me, and I don't think enough people have read this book, and I can see why, just because it is a sequel to Ender's Game, which is definitely the more popular and mainstream of the books. But Speaker for the Dead has much more like adult themes, not adult themes in like a spicy way, but adult themes in like a kind of thought-provoking, deep way, if that makes any sense. And
are there more books beyond this one, or is it just those two?
There are a bunch. So this series is a quintet, and it follows Ender, and then I haven't read the rest of them, so I think it like also kind of shifts from Ender's perspective at some point, but this series is Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead, Xenocide, Children of the Mind, and something else. And I've only read the first two of this series, and then there is a secondary series that's called the Shadow series, and it's definitely more highly regarded than the latter books of the Ender series. It follows a different character that you come into contact with for the first time in Ender's Game called Bean, and I think that those books follow him. Yeah, so I initially read Ender's Game right before starting college, and then read Speaker for the Dead at the start of grad school, and I reread both of these while I was sick a couple weeks ago, and remembered how much I love both of these books, and just how talented Orson Scott Card is at writing a sci-fi book that will keep me extremely engaged without getting lost in like the exposition, if that makes sense. Because like the first third of a science fiction book is where you're going to lose me. And I just won't finish it if it's like too much world building, too just, I don't know, insane. And so I really like Ender's Game because there's very little of that, and you're kind of learning on the fly, learning as you go. And so Ender's Game, like I said, is following the character Ender, who is a very young child at the start of the book. He is a 5-year-old, I think, and he gets recruited for special military training that's intended to defend Earth from an alien race called the Buggers, who basically attacked us years and years ago, and we're basically preparing to defend ourselves from another attack when they come back, because we defeated them the first time with great losses, and now we want to be prepared. And so they're recruiting all of these children, and it's like super fucked up. They're like manipulating them, and these like 6-year-olds are like training other children to lead battles against each other, and it's very strange. And I think the book it's definitely a book about children, but I wouldn't say that it's a book for kids. It's definitely sad, and it focuses a lot on human fear and the consequences of that, and how far we'll go, and what kind of like horrible things we might do to children to protect ourselves. But there's a lot of manipulation and violence and loneliness that Ender has to endure throughout the course of the book in order to succeed in what the military is training him for.
Ever seen the film adaptation of Ender's Game?
I did, like forever ago. I
saw
remember
it forever ago as well, and that I haven't read the books. I only saw the film way, way back, close to when it came out. So I was wondering if you had any insight into how similar or how like faithful the film is to the book. If I would like
I think it is pretty faithful.
If that's all I have to base it on.
I don't think they made, like, huge changes.
Mm-hmm.
I think the ending might be slightly different, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
I remember I didn't love the film adaptation just because the book is a lot more detailed and I always like the book better. But I'd like to revisit the film adaptation at some point just because it's been a really long time. And so, not to give everything away from Ender's Game, but basically from the book, Ender becomes kind of like this war hero, and the military is celebrating a win at the very end of that book. And Speaker for the Dead is set many, many years later. It's actually set hundreds of years later.
Oh, really?
But because of space travel, Ender is still like a 30-year-old man who's been like traveling around in space for a really long time.
Oh.
And so the perspective of the world on Ender's military career has shifted. Like, think Oppenheimer vibes of like, huge celebration. Mm-hmm. Now we fucking hate you.
Wow,
you know?
Wow, that's interesting.
And I thought I think that that's a very interesting tone to set at the start of this book. And so Ender is going by his birth name in this book, which is Andrew. Mm. Ender is a nickname that his sister gave him when they were kids. And so everyone has always called him that. And so now he goes by Andrew. And so a lot of people don't know who Ender is, and he has no more military career. He doesn't do any of that stuff anymore. And he travels around as a speaker for the dead. And a speaker for the dead is basically a person that you can call to give kind of a remembrance ceremony for somebody you knew. And so you basically put in a request, and one of many speakers for the dead come. And no one knows this, but Ender is actually the first speaker for the dead. He kind of invented the concept of the speaker for the dead. And so that kind of crops up throughout the book. But regardless, Ender basically gets a call to speak a death on the planet of Lusitania, which is an Earth-colonized planet. So there are humans living there. But then there is also like an alien species on that planet that we're trying not to contaminate and like accelerate their development as a culture and things like that. So that's like a major aspect of this book as well. And the death that he has been called to speak is for a man named Peepo. And Peepo studied this alien race, and it was all going very well, and then they murdered him. And so there's a lot of mystery about why this man has died. And basically, a speaker for the dead comes, and they do a bunch of research. They interview people who knew the dead. They kind of, their goal is to learn the truth and speak only the truth.
So they're kind of like a detective then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Because I was like, I still understand what they do.
I know. And so it's very different. And there's a lot of interactions between the speaker and the church, because this is a largely Catholic society.
Oh, wow.
And so there's kind of tension there where the Catholic priest initially tells people in the town, like, don't talk to this guy. And he kind of has to win over their trust and prove that he's just there to find out the truth.
When were these books originally written?
The 80s. So Ender's Game was published in 1985, and Speaker for the Dead was published in 86.
I was thinking that was one of those sneaky series that's older than you think it is.
It is, yeah, but it's very timeless. Like, it reads like you would never know that it was written in the 80s, honestly. And so anyways, sorry, I'm getting kind of in the weeds. It's a lot to kind of cover, and I'm still only in the exposition, guys. Like, we have not covered like main plot stuff. Anyways, so Ender gets there, and actually 2 more people have died since then, and he has received requests to speak for them as well. And this is decades later that he's arriving on this planet from the initial request. And so the first guy's been dead for like 20 years at this point, and his son has since died in the same way as his father, murdered by the aliens, and then another man in the village has died of natural causes since then. But all of these deaths actually revolve around one woman named Novena, and she is clearly keeping secrets, and she's discovered something that she doesn't want anyone else to learn of, because she's convinced that that is why her loved ones keep getting killed. And so, basically, Ender shows up and he's like, I'm gonna uncover this secret because it's associated with all of these deaths, and I've got to speak these deaths, you know? Mm-hmm. But yeah, so really interesting, definitely complex in terms of plot, and there's other things going on, other motivations that Ender has for being on this planet that I won't get into, but it's definitely very rich in terms of content to dig into, and I haven't even scratched the surface in my like very long, poorly thought out explanation. But I love this book. I love that it has some really cool sci-fi. Ender's Game as well has some really cool sci-fi going on. I especially love the computer game that Ender plays in the book. It's like a AI computer game that adapts to the children and like invents these scenarios for them to go through. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. I don't know if that was in the movie, but very cool. And then there's like some communication devices that are really cool that like allow you to talk to anyone anywhere in the universe with no delay. So very creative sci-fi aspects to this book. And I love Ender as a character, especially his transition from Ender's Game to Speaker for the Dead, because you can imagine a world in which a child who's a war hero gets like pretty fucked up. Mm-hmm. And I think that Ender is protected from a lot of that because there is no desire for pride or glory from his childhood war career. And he is mostly just doing what he's told to be able to get through this and stop being part of war. And in Speaker for the Dead, we see him grown up, and we see this really, really empathetic person who is able to understand people on a level that he can speak their lives in the most honest way, because he can truly understand them as a person through all of these interviews that he takes from those around him. And even though he is telling people secrets and bringing things to light that they don't want in the light, it's actually a very cathartic and healing process for everyone in the book. And you get to see him repairing relationships between family members that are screaming and fighting and being horrible to each other, and they're very resistant to him coming in and providing that healing, but he keeps bringing people closer. And his empathy also makes him really crucial in understanding why the alien race on this planet keeps killing people. And so he is really able to come in from an anthropological perspective as well and really understand this alien race in a way that no one's ever tried before, because they're thinking of them as animals and not as equals. And I think that that's also really interesting as a scientist to kind of think about how to shift a perspective in a way that makes you a better scientist. There's also some really cool biology happening in this book. Like, I was very intrigued by it, but basically there's a virus that most of the planet has adapted to in ways that has like completely changed its biology to something that we as Earthlings can't understand. And I loved learning about just the biology in this book. It was just fascinating to think about this book and read this book. Even though it has so many different things that it's covering, it does it all so well that you don't feel like it's disjointed. And I don't know. I think that when people criticize this book, they say that it can be a little bit overt in its messaging. And I think that that's true. A lot of it is like more direct text and less subtext, but I still think that it gives you a lot to think about, and it just talks about human nature in a way that I really enjoyed, and I think Ender represents a part of human nature that I really appreciate, and I think that we should all try to be more empathetic and listen, like, and try to understand other people instead of just like living in our own internal monologue. And I think that that's like the crux of this book for me and why I like it so much, because I think it makes me want to be a more empathetic and community oriented person, I guess. I think it's like quite inspiring. But yeah, I guess that's all I've got. I'm seeing in my notes, though, that I did draw a parallel between the biology stuff going on in this book to Annihilation. And so if you were kind of a fan of all of the stuff going on in the Annihilation movie, you might find that biology kind of interesting. I hope you guys go read it. It's a really cool book and definitely worth the read.
Yeah, that's a fascinating jump from the first book to the second book that I had no idea where the series went after the events that are covered in the movie. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I was reading, I think it was just the introduction for Speaker for the Dead, but Orson Scott Card was talking about how Speaker for the Dead was his initial idea and how that was the book he really wanted to write, but he didn't have like the bridge to get there yet. And so he took a break from the book and then wrote Ender's Game and created the character of Ender and then transitioned him into the Speaker for the Dead. And so I thought that that was a really cool fact about like the origins, that the second book was actually the main idea, right? Because that's how it feels to me, is that the main book is this second novel. And the first book feels good and interesting, but this is the book that I like care about, you know?
That's really interesting. That like the more famous one is really just a preamble for the second one. Very interesting.
Yeah. I love it, though. I think it's fantastic and just has so many ideas in it to dig into. So,
How long is it? It sounds quite long.
It is quite long. It is, I want to say, between 400 and 500 pages.
Oh, okay. That's not as long as I was thinking.
And it goes so fast because Orson Scott Card's writing style is just one that like picks up momentum in a way that I find very enjoyable. I'm trying to think like what style it would remind me of.
When you were describing things, the mental imagery I was creating reminded me of the mental imagery I use for Martha Wells's books.
I was thinking that the writing style has a bit of overlap there, actually. Yeah. Especially with like all the space travel vibes, I was picturing that very similarly as well.
Cool.
But yeah, I think more people should read this and let me know what you think.
I definitely wasn't aware of it before today.
They
should advertise that more. That Speaker, is it of the Dead or for the Dead?
For the Dead.
Speaker for the Dead was actually the marquee idea.
Yeah.
Rather than Ender's Game.
Which I think is also why it has such like sprawling ideas in it, because I think he felt like he had so much to say in that book, you know, which I don't feel like it makes it disjointed or disconnected at all, but I don't know what other people think. But what do these things have in common?
Let's talk about what our two favorites this week have in common. I have a few things.
Mm-hmm.
One of them stems off of something you just mentioned, which is that it sounds like both of these pieces of media are very thematically rich with a large scope of ideas, but without feeling disjointed to the reader. There's a seamless incorporation of many important and weighty ideas without it being jarring.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. Yeah. I think that both of these pieces of media have a underlying theme of our desire to both be understood and to understand those around us, or be understood by those around us and those that we care about, and understand them as well. I mentioned that a lot of this is about like empathy, or a lot of Speaker for the Dead is about empathy and the ability to love and understand people who you never knew. I think that that's such an interesting concept. And you said that this kind of It's Such a Beautiful Day kind of touches on Bill's journey to understand his loved ones at one point, and what that means.
No, I had kind of a similar point, especially when you were mentioning how the process that the Speaker for the Dead is going through can repair bridges between family members involved. And so the sections of It's Such a Beautiful Day that talk about Bill's mom, and I think potentially his grandmother as well, I could be misremembering, because the experience was like so overwhelming that I feel like I'm failing to grasp key details, but all of the insights that we get into Bill's family, and I'm certain the insights about Bill's mom, I think offer a cathartic experience by offering and illuminating this better understanding of Bill's family members. It's like a very cathartic experience for the audience, and it sounds like the same is true in Speaker for the Dead.
Yeah. I mean, you know me, I cry all the time, but this book always makes me cry multiple times throughout, and it's like a very good cathartic kind of cry. It's not like Strawberry Thief kind of crying. It's like good and heartfelt, and it like feels relieving as opposed to just like heavy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's definitely based on the overall feeling that you're left with that you described. I think both of these pieces inspire you to leave with the same feeling, which is that they both inspire you to want to be a part of the world around you, because there's beauty in those surroundings, and there's beauty in that community and that immediate environment. And I definitely feel like that was a feeling that I took away from It's Such a Beautiful Day.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. On my list, I also have that these both are largely focused to some extent on the concept of death and dying, and what that means. I assume also what that means for loved ones who are left behind after death. Yeah,
I would say definitely the majority of It's Such a Beautiful Day is focused on death, at least from my point of view, or at the very least illness, as a illness that's on a trajectory towards death, for sure.
Yeah. I think that's all I had.
Yeah, I have one more. It's a little bit general, but I think it's fair. You described the writing in Speaker for the Dead as timeless, and I think the same argument can be made for It's Such a Beautiful Day, even though it's only 12-ish years old at this point. I think the ideas and the writing feel timeless to me because you're dealing with such heavy concepts that the ideas are just as relevant now more than ever. And
yeah. And I think the animation style, as far as I've seen, it because it doesn't like date itself in like a specific style.
Yeah.
I think that lends itself to that timeless effect because that could be made in the 50s. It could be made in 2060, you know?
Yeah. Like it's so raw as to not give away any specific era. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. That was a pretty good pull for overlaps. I was not sure how we were going to tie it all together. But
me too. I think that wasn't so bad.
No. Yeah. So definitely check out It's Such a Beautiful Day and see if it's coming to a theater near you or order a Blu-ray player and a Blu-ray copy.
Yeah.
What did you think of Me?
Oh, I liked that as well. It was interesting because it was originally meant to be a music video, but then got refashioned into the version that it is now. And it was certainly very good. And I would like to see it again. I would like to see both of these again, definitely to like be able to process them a bit deeper. But Me is definitely worth watching as well.
Cool. Yeah, I hope that they release it as something that's streaming, or I wonder if they have plans for that.
I would hope so. I definitely think it would be really worthwhile to release the entire package of what I saw in the theater as an entire piece, especially with that interstitial introduction from Don Hertzfeldt, because I loved that part.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. Yeah. So check out your local theaters, see if it's coming to an area near you, or travel to New York City and go see it. And also check out Ender's Game and Speaker for the Dead. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thanks for joining us this week on Friend Diagram. Thank you to Tyler Seek for the creation of our intro and outro music. Did you take any of our recommendations? Have any thoughts on the show? Let us know at frienddiagrampod@gmail.com, and we might read your email on a future episode. If you can, please take a moment to rate and review the show on your podcast app of choice, and we'll see you back here, same place next week. Bye for now.